Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2023 GMC Canyon, we're going to be showing you how to install the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms. Before we get into that though, we'll take a minute, check this one out, and make sure it's going to be the right setup for you. Before we jump right in, I do want to address the most popular question that we get asked in regards to setting up a flat toe, and that's what are the main parts that I'm going to need. So you have a total of 5 major components: your base plate, and then you'll have your tow bar, which connects to the base plate, goes back to your motorhome. You'll have your safety cables, your tow bar wiring, and your supplemental braking system. There are a few other components that I definitely recommend when it comes to the Canyon, one of them being a towed vehicle battery charge line kit. It's going to keep your battery topped off when you're flat towing. The other one being an automatic battery disconnect switch. Since these Canyons, you have to disconnect the battery every time you flat tow. Kind of a pain. So with the switch, you just push a button and it does it for you. And then depending on what supplemental braking system you get, one of them being the Stay and Play Duo or the Roadmaster InvisiBrake, I definitely highly recommend using a stoplight switch kit. Let's talk about the base plate now. So this is how it can look whenever you're not hooked up behind your motorhome and flat towing down the road, which I think is important because you're not always going to be pulling this around, right? And I think the base plate looks really good, actually. It comes through the openings that your tow hooks were originally in, so you know, it doesn't really look out of place. There's already something there to begin with, and putting the base plate there doesn't really draw your eyes to it by any means, at least in my opinion. And it does have more of a matte or flat black finish, which I am a fan of. You know, it looks a little bit more modern, at least to me. And they give you these little plugs too you can put in there, not only to help keep it clean, but I think it blends in a little bit better as well. Now, compared to the other base plate available, which is made by Roadmaster, you can't really go wrong with either one, to be honest with you. I think there's pros and cons to both of them. So with the Blue Ox, with this one, I'm a big fan of the finish, right? I like that matte black a lot. But they don't give you a included bracket or a really good spot to mount up some of your other components, like your breakaway switch. So you had to kind of get creative. I got ours mounted up here, but it took a little time to figure that out. And the bracket that they give you mounts up your connector down here. As opposed to the Roadmaster one, they give you a spot that's already attached and set up on the base plate to mount up your breakaway switch. And their connector, they give you a custom fit bracket that kind of bolts up behind here and puts it in this location. So I kind of like that setup a little bit better, but you know, ultimately it's going to be what you think looks the best and the setup that you like the most, and it'll be the most comfortable with. When you are ready to hook up to your motorhome, you'll have these removable arms. And the way they work, pull out the plugs, put those in, rotate them about a quarter turn until they lock into place. Same deal on the other side. And now that's going to give you the attachment point that you need to hook up your tow bar ends. As far as what tow bars are going to be compatible, the vast majority of the Blue Ox tow bars out there are going to fit directly to this, along many others too. I believe some of the Kurt tow bars, some of the etrailer tow bars with the Blue Ox ends will match up with this, and even some of the other brands. So for example, Roadmaster makes a tow bar that has Blue Ox ends on it that'll be compatible, like the Nighthawk, for example. And even if you, let's say if you already have a tow bar that is a different brand, we'll just say Roadmaster, for example, and you really like it, you don't want to have to buy a new one, what you can do is, chances are really good, there's adapter ends available that'll allow you to remove your existing ends, put the new ones on it that are going to be compatible with this base plate. As far as what submodels a base plate is going to fit, sounds like it'll fit everything across the board, really with one exception, and that's if you happen to have an off-road style bumper. So perfect example today. We have a Denali version, went on without any issues. Sounds like a lot of people have done them on the AT4 versions, so on and so forth. So you should be in pretty good shape as far as that goes. Now, as far as the installation is concerned, it really wasn't too complicated per se. I'll say the most difficult part about it was just getting the front fascia removed. There's a lot of clips and plastic, so be careful and take your time. Once that's out of the way though, the base plate actually goes on pretty easy. Don't really have to modify a bunch of stuff or anything along those lines, so should be in pretty good shape as long as you stay patient. Now, if this is something that you don't feel like messing with or don't have the time or place to do it, I definitely understand that. You can always use our dealer locator network, and hopefully that can get you going in the right direction as far as finding a shop that can help you out with it. But with that said, why don't we go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Canyon, and we're going to need to get the fascia removed. So start by popping the hood, and then along this edge here, we're going to have a total of 4 fasteners, 2 on each side. This is what the fasteners are going to look like, and we're going to need a T15 Torx bit. So I'll go ahead and pull these out. I want to mention from this point on, whatever we do to one side of our truck, we're also going to do to the other side because it'll be set up the exact same way. You can move to your wheel wells now, and it definitely helps if you turn your wheel one way, out or in, gives you more room to work. But since we're going to be popping this plastic piece off and kind of working in this area, I use some blue painter's tape all around the edges just so we don't accidentally scratch anything up. But with that said, if we look along this edge of our liner, we're going to have some T15 screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there will be a 5th hidden one kind of up here in this area. So we'll go ahead and get all those removed. I like to remove all of these as well. This makes it a little easier. The same bit. There'll be a total of 4 of these. With all them out now, you can grab the liner and start to release it. And just go slow until you feel, kind of get tight. And what we'll have to do is start to get this piece popped off here. So it's a little tricky to see, but once we get a few of them off here, I can show you the fasteners that I'm working to get this released. So with this fender piece, it's pretty tight, so just take your time with it, and you can take a trim tool and apply a little pressure on it just to help kind of loosen it up. But ideally, what I'm trying to do is come in from the back here and push on these push pins to get it to release. They're just little plastic fasteners holding this in, but you want to be careful with them because you don't want to break them here. And unfortunately, there's just not really a great trick to get these out, Sometimes I'll come in with a real small screwdriver and pry down on them, and once I get this thing popped off here, I'll give you a better idea of what's going on so we can actually see. More or less, I'm just trying to squeeze. There's little clips. There you go. There's little clips on these. All right, and so I was coming in from the back and just trying to squeeze those in, and while you're doing that, pull out, and that can get them pop free. If you're having a hard time getting to it, like this very bottom one, you can't hardly reach. I was pulling it out just enough to get this small screwdriver in there and just kind of pushing down on the clip like that when I'm working it out. So once you get a couple of them going though, it usually makes everything a little bit easier. You want to remove this piece up until about here, you know, and what we're trying to do, there's a fastener right there that's attaching the front fascia to the quarter panel. That's why we're popping this off, so we can get to it. To help keep it pulled away from our vehicle, I'm just gonna put a piece of foam there. And this is also a T15. We'll grab our bit. Pull it out. If you take your wheel aligner and just push that out of the way, you'll see this bracket here. And that's connecting the fascia to our frame. And we'll have these two T15s. I'm gonna pull those out. Just over here on the passenger side, behind our wheel aligner, we're gonna have a couple of connectors here that we can disconnect. You might only have one, but if you got both, you need to unhook both of them. So what I'm doing here, I'm just taking a trim tool and just releasing it, make it a little easier to work with. And then to unhook these, this one you have a red tab, push down on it, and you can push on the center. The two ends will pop apart. For this connector here, you have a red tab, you push down on it, and then there's another tab in the middle, similar to the other connector, and those will then be released. Moving underneath the truck now, you may or may not have fasteners here. In our case, it looks like there should be some here, but there's nothing. The last Canyon I just did, as a 24, it had Torx bit fasteners here. Either way, you know, grab the bottom of it. And if there's anything holding this to the frame of the vehicle, then you'll have to get those removed. At this point, we should be able to get the fascia removed, and these things are held in place. There's a bunch of those clips, kind of like our wheel well fender flares behind here, right? And so what I like to do is just kind of grab up on this and start to work it around and just try to loosen everything up. So you can also grab this top part, grab the bottom part, and just kind of gently work everything loose, and that tends to make things easier when we actually go to pull the fascia off here. Now you definitely want to get an extra set of hands to help you with this part. It makes it much easier, but I'm just gonna get a little more aggressive now, start to pull out, you know, then do that on the other side too. It'll start to loosen up, and then we'll have to come to here, and there's some clips holding this in, and they're tight for sure. So just take your time, maneuver it around. We're just trying to get these little clips to release. Sometimes if you got a little pick or small flathead screwdriver. And get in there and pop them free. But it seems like once you get one or two of these kind of going, usually starts to free up a little bit more. I got this off, just prying on it, kind of like how we were doing our fasteners on this. The problem is too, they say you can remove this piece, but you can get to a few of the screws, but you're not able to really get to this one. So it kind of defeats the purpose. It might give you a little more working room, but entirely up to you. Just take your time, work everything loose. Try not to break any clips or anything. But once that's off, you can just manipulate the fascia here to get it completely removed, and we'll set it off to the side. We can go ahead, get our tow hooks removed. So there's 2 fasteners. The bolt head's going to be an 18mm size, and then of course where the bolt comes through on the other side there will be a nut. That's also an 18mm. That's what the nut looks like there. And pull this one out as well. These removed from the front of our truck. On our truck we have this lower shutter system here, and we're going to need to unplug it. So there's a connector over here on the driver's side. You just push that red tab down, and then you can push on the center of the pin, and that will allow you to unplug it. Now if you follow that bracket for your active shutters down along this cross member here, there's going to be a screw that we need to remove, and it's going to be a 7mm head. Not a lot of room in here, so ideally, if you got a little box wrench like this, that seems to work out pretty well. We should be able to get our bumper beam off now. So on each side you have 3 15mm head bolts. I got the other ones out already, so I'm going to put a little weight on the beam to support it when I remove this last one. We should be able to slide this off the front of our truck and set it to the side for now. Just over here on the driver's side where we unplug that electrical connector, there's going to be a push pin fastener holding the wiring, the frame here, and we don't want that to be in the way of our base plate, so we'll just use our trim tool and pry it free. We'll grab our base plate now, and these are side specific, so check the instructions, make sure you got the right side. And this hole and this hole, those are going to line up with the openings there that we're holding on our tow hooks. And for this one, you want to take a bolt, put on a flat washer. For that opening, you can just take a bolt. We'll slide this into position and push those all the way through. Where the bolts come through, you want to take some red Loctite and put it on the threads. And we'll be using this for all of our attachment points that we're going to use to secure the base plate. That bolt closest to the back though, you can just take a lock nut and get that started hand tight. For this one, put on your flat washer and a nylon lock nut. Once you got both sides loosely installed, you can take your bumper beam and grab the factory bolts that we're securing the bumper beam in. Put on your red Loctite. We're going to line this all up here. And get this hardware started hand tight. Once you get all of them started hand tight, we'll come back with our 15 and snug them down. We can snug up the side bolts now using a 3/4 inch socket and wrench. We need to make sure now and come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. Now what you can do is install the safety cables. So they give you the cables and this D-link here. What you want to do is just wrap it around the frame. This side I was able to get it wrapped around both times just so there's not so much slack in it. It was really tight. If you can't manage to do that, you know, you can always come back with zip ties and kind of zip tie up some of that slack that's in the cable. That way it's not bouncing around whenever we're driving down the road. At this point, I plugged our shutter electrical connection back in, took those two 7mm head screws, reinstalled those opposite way that we removed them. And at this point, it'd be a good time to kind of start thinking about maybe installing some of your other flat towing components. And I say it because with the front fascia removed, we have a lot more room to route wires and things of that nature. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And once we kind of get to that stopping point, we can come back, think about where we're going to mount up our electrical bracket and get the fascia reinstalled. After getting the other components mounted up on the front of our truck, we can move back to our fascia here. And this is how we ended up setting up our wiring bracket, which comes included. I just took that, lined it up with these openings here on the driver's side, and drilled a couple of 1/4 inch holes and used the hardware to secure it. Something to think about too when you're doing this, because we're going to try to not have to cut anything if at all possible. How you position this, you know, think the electrical connector is going to get mounted like that. So if you were to go lower, you know, it would probably drive that into the plastic, and then you'd be having to cut a little sliver out and stuff. So just kind of hold everything together and think things through before you actually mount up this bracket. Now we can go ahead and get our fascia reinstalled the opposite way that we removed it. If I end up having to trim anything or make any adjustments, pretty much if we do anything differently, we'll come back and tell you what we had to do, and I'll show you what's going on here. But in theory, everything should fit right back together. I got the fascia all snapped back into position where it's going to you know, be permanently fixed and everything, and didn't have to cut or modify anything at all. The base plate came through those openings without any issues there, and so a good fit overall. With that said, now that I know that, I'll continue on completely resecuring the fascia the opposite way that we removed it. Now that everything checked out good, that will do it for our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms on our 2023 GMC Canyon.